I always say to people that if the only challenge you are dealing with in your life right now are the ones that life dealt you, then you are not living a fully conscious life yet. That statement was made by Brendon Burchard, author of the book High Performance Habits. He goes on to say, you are living a life of reaction if you are not deliberately pushing yourself, placing difficult tasks and challenges on your path. You are reacting, you are not growing. Growing, that's what it's all about. I remember when I shared with my wife that I wanted to run the 2020 Lagos City Marathon. What do you hope to achieve from this? I remember she asked me. Honestly, I don't know, I remember saying to her. And that was the truth. I honestly didn't know or have any idea of what I hoped to achieve from running the 2020 Lagos City Marathon. Because it all didn't make sense. Was I a professional runner? No. Had I ever run a marathon before or done any form of long distance running? Definitely no. Then why did I want to do it? It was beginning to look like a fool's errand. Why would a writer and a trainer be running a marathon? What if I get seriously hurt in the process? Isn't this an unnecessary risk? Now, risk, that's exactly the word I'm looking for. If we are going to take our lives to a whole new level, then we must be willing to take risks. Now, the challenge though for most of us isn't that we don't know the importance of risk taking. The challenge for most of us at this level that we are is knowing the difference between necessary and unnecessary risks. To the extent that you hear people say things like, take risks, or take calculated risks. Calculated risks? What in the world is a calculated risk? I remember going online and Googling the word calculated risk and really not seeing anything that really resonated with my spirit and with my heart. All I was just seeing was some sciencey, textbooky stuff until I listened to Brendon Burchard. He says, take risks, but take purposeful risks. Be purposeful in your risk taking. And I say, yes, that's it. That's exactly what I'm looking for. You know how you have this idea in your head, but you don't have the right words or vocabulary to capture that thought and idea and convey it and communicate it to someone else. That was exactly the same challenge I was having. Here I was, I knew the importance of risk taking as a lesson I had learned from my marathon experience, but I didn't have the words and how to share the lesson until I listened to Brendon Burchard. Now, if we are going to be the very best version of ourselves, if we are going to go on to be those high performers that God has created us to be, it's very important that we are willing to take risks, but to take purposeful risk, to be purposeful in our risk taking. Now, the question I'm sure you will be asking is, what is a purposeful risk? A purposeful risk is, number one, a risk that challenges us. It's asking, how can I make the process harder so that I can get better? Now, the idea for me was running the 2020 Lagos City Marathon was a way to challenge myself. Even if I had no idea what I hoped to achieve out of running the race, one thing that I knew for sure was that this is something I had never done before. This is something new. It's a new challenge. It's something that will probably take the whole of me to achieve. And that's why I wanted to do it. I love the way Arnold Schwarzenegger puts it. He calls it muscle shock therapy. And the idea is that you shock your muscles into doing something difficult and hard that they have never done before, so that they have no choice but to stretch, sometimes break, but eventually heal and grow. Now that's what a challenge does to us. It will cause us to stretch, sometimes break, but at the end of the day, we will heal, grow, and become better versions of ourselves. Number two, a purposeful risk is a risk that dares us to do something different. Now, the idea is that how can you do what you do in a radically different way? This was one of the reasons why I ran the 2020 Lagos City Marathon. I remember saying to my wife one day that if I and our beloved Pastor Sam Adeyemi were to stand side by side, who also happens to be a trainer in the success and personal development space, and both of us were beckoning at you saying, follow us and we'll show you the path to be successful in life, you, my loving and supporting wife, would definitely not follow me. This is why I have to run the marathon. This is why I have to do something that the veteran trainers are probably not thinking of doing. I need to find a way to differentiate myself and validate my message. Number 3, a purposeful risk is a risk that dares us to share more of ourselves. It's about asking, how can I move from speaking from my head to speaking from my heart? How can I dare to move from something theoretical to something more personal and practical? And that's what it's about, and that's what the marathon experience was all about for me. It was for me moving from teaching something theoretical and sharing something practical, sharing my own and personal experience of challenging myself, daring to do something different, and then daring to share that experience with you and with anyone around the world that will see the No Excuses series. And saying that, look, how can I share more of myself? How can I share more of what I really think and feel and desire? It's about that belief in people's capacity to handle the truth, my truth and your truth. And that's what it's about. That's what a purposeful risk is, and that's what it does for us. If we are really going to live a life of no excuses, a life where we exceed limits, break barriers, go on to crush our goals and become the very best version of ourselves, it's helpful to remember that to evolve, we need to be willing to take risks. And it's better to evolve than to be a latecomer to evolution. And it's also helpful to remember that not all risks actually are rewarded, but you know what's never rewarded? Stagnation.